Boston Consulting Group has put together a report outlining what the consultancy says are the 10 big focus areas that New Zealand executives have to be aware of in 2024. Co-managing director of BCG in New Zealand is Kelly Newton, and she joins me now. Kelly, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
It's the year of hard decisions, I think, is the upshot of what you're saying.
Absolutely. So companies have to make hard decisions all the time, and this year is no different. But now, with borrowing costs being much higher for companies, that hurdle rate for what makes a good decision has really been raised. I think kind of productivity is one area that's always a good decision, and so I think that's where we'll see a lot of companies focus this year.
Absolutely. Although it is an eternal question for companies, isn't
Yes.
it, as well, productivity. Let's just delve into them a little bit more. There's 10 points. You say the decade of ultra-low rates is over. I think that's pretty obvious. But what's the impact? Why does that become a concern in 2024?
Right. So I think it was ultra low rates because it was really hovering around that 2% rate. But when you look historically, it's really more around 5-6% would be considered normal. But you have a lot of people that are coming into the workforce or may have expected to buy a home at that very low interest rate. And now they're finding that it's actually not very affordable for them as an individual. And businesses have maybe become accustomed to doing additional investment in digital capabilities or in building out new parts of the business that now are going to face slightly higher hurdle rates to go forward.
And that kind of is the backdrop to one of the other points you make, which is about consumer spending. The pressure on consumers is going to be significant this year.
Absolutely. And so consumers, as we mentioned in the report, are already spending about 43% of their income on rent or mortgage. And so with interest rates increasing, that is only going to increase. And so that's going to put more pressure on them to be spending less elsewhere. And so typically what we would see is that consumers are going to potentially switch to products that are more private label products instead of some of the brands that they like. They may also be decreasing their discretionary spending.
Yeah. Productivity is what you're saying, as you were
Yes.
before. It's easy to say that, but what do companies actually have to do at the more granular level?
Yeah, so there are kind of two levers of productivity. Oftentimes, companies will think about productivity as just decreasing the number of people that work there or just decreasing costs. So that's one of the levers, but the other is looking at where are those opportunities for growth. And so coming from New Zealand, are there opportunities here within New Zealand, or where is there space in some of the global market? And so where are they globally differentiated that would provide that opportunity to increase productivity? And I think it is always on the agenda, but productivity specifically within New Zealand has really lagged other countries, even other small countries. And so looking at that over time, what is it that New Zealand can do to improve productivity?
Yeah, the eternal question, I guess. Brain drain is something you've delved into quite a bit in this report. From my reading of it, it seems that it's not a whole lot of New Zealanders leaving or more than ever. It's that we are not attracting the kind of high-quality migrant that we would like.
Yes. And so some of this, I think the jury is still out if it's a holdover from the COVID pandemic when people weren't able to immigrate into New Zealand. Yes. But yes, we're seeing the UK, the US, Australia, they're not having as many people come to New Zealand as they have in the past. There has been an increase from some other countries, such as China, into New Zealand, but that's really not making up for it. And so what we see is that for students that are graduating, there are far fewer of some of those international students than there have been in the past. And you have fewer people in that 15 to 34 age range that really are the kind of supporting the economy from, they're not as much of a drain on the resources of the economy, and they're contributing to what you would expect in terms of the tax base that really supports the rest of the economy.
But also at those higher age groups, I mean, I guess we are used to maybe British people having stellar careers and then coming to New Zealand for a change of pace, for example, or Americans. Why aren't they coming? Or where are they going?
It's a good question. I don't know that we know the answer of where they're going or why they're not coming. I think the jury, as I said, is still out in terms of, is it the COVID pandemic and a holdover of maybe they made other choices, or because New Zealand was not actually open more recently than some other countries, they may have made other decisions and haven't yet come back. I think that still remains to be seen.
So what can businesses do about that?
So I don't know that businesses are necessarily going to reverse the brain drain problem, but I think that they need to think about how are they recruiting and retaining some of their talent and giving talent the opportunity. So New Zealanders have always wanted to go abroad and get international experience. And so if you're a company that is able to offer those experiences, but also have a path for people to return to New Zealand, that's likely something you want to continue to think about, and maybe more so now than ever. For other companies that may depend on some of that international talent, they may need to actually go out of New Zealand to start to recruit them versus relying on the local universities.
Right, yeah. So overall, you would say it's a year of tough decisions because you don't seem to have some of the leeway that we've had in previous years.
Correct. I think it is going to be a tough year for companies in terms of the decisions and the trade-offs that they're making. They're really looking for the returns and something that's more guaranteed, but they also need to be investing ahead of some of these risks that will only start to take shape. It could be 5 years from now.
Kelly, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
For more content just like this and all the latest business and political news, head over to mbr.co.nz.